Good evening. My name is Joe Sam Robinson, and it's my pleasure to have with us once again Dr. Buck Melton. Welcome, Buck.
Greetings.
I know you're full of all sorts of insights. We often ask you to offer an initial insight, but if the cupboard is bare, I could offer one.
Well, I can offer an interesting sociological observation.
Yes.
You probably know, as anybody watches me throwing the Vulcan salute at the
Right.
end of the show, I'm a bit of a Trekkie. I'm celebrating my 51st year as a Trekkie.
Oh, is that right? Did you
yes.
have a little ceremony? Is that?
Not really. Just I got into Star Trek in '73 when it wasn't cool. Excuse me. So, and Star Trek really has been transformative in many ways. One of the ways that really caught my attention is that there is an Italian Air Force colonel, and she's got, I think, like 2 PhDs. She's a fighter pilot. She's an astronaut. And what do we get? We get a picture of her in the International Space Station wearing a Starfleet science uniform, throwing a Vulcan salute. And I have to say, Trekkies have changed the world,
Okay.
truly. But the little bon mot that I have for you today is that Captain Kirk never actually said, "Beam me up, Scotty."
He didn't.
That was an invention of the fans.
Is that right? Well,
Yes.
that's a good fact.
So there you are.
Now, I will just make one gesture or make one comment. You've been doing this for 51st anniversary is coming up.
Yes.
I hope your wife is going to make a cake that has 51 on it, or maybe 51 candles or something like, or, a picture of Scotty or something.
No, she's just going to roll her eyes. She indulges me. I am a geek and a nerd, and she just tolerates it. So, which is very kind of her.
Well, I
must
think
say.
wives are good at. I
Yes.
think most wives tolerate their husband's imperfections.
Yes.
So
Of
good
course,
for them.
of course, she does have a T-shirt that reads, "I miss my husband, but my aim is improving."
Ha 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 ha. Well, that's clever.
Yes.
That's clever. Well, all right, that's rather funny. But now we talk about a lot of things, and one thing that's it's impossible to avoid these days are the presidential contest. What is going on right now? And just to summarize that, President Biden is presumably keeping a low profile. His handlers are keeping him off the stage as much as possible, and his son's, I guess, problems are going to. We have a trial coming up with that soon, and I'm sure that will be fairly lurid. And then, of course, we have the President Trump's stories with many legal events happening, and his rather infamous trial in New York City with the tryst with a porn star. Of course, that's certainly very salacious. And well, we have these circumstances. Are we getting any kind of political dialogue where we're really seriously talking about this is what we want to do about tariffs, or Social Security's in trouble, or we're going to do something with taxes, or what should be the U.S. Position in the Middle East? What should we be doing? Or the Ukraine, which seems to go at. It's interesting, there's just almost no publicity about the Ukraine, almost no comments. And for a while, huge amounts of dollars went there, only with difficulty is any other money coming. Maybe, and that would be a huge geopolitical event that there's no discussion really about. What's going on in the Middle East is there's a lot of attention to it and a lot of, I would say, confusion. And I don't think particularly the presidential candidates are illuminating it much. In fact, they try and avoid any kind of, or at least I would say President Biden does. He doesn't want to cause trouble. And I guess President Trump certainly speaks up. Nevertheless, we're not having a really good interchange, are we? And does that not serve the public's interest? We just have this, we're going to hear about Hunter's drug issues, and we'll hear about President Trump's imperfections.
Yes. Well, I think you have several things going on here, and I think you probably need a sociologist more than more than anyone else to explain this, but I think it's a combination of technology, the public's desire to be entertained, the ability of technology to entertain us, the lack of critical thought, which we touched on a little bit in one of our previous episodes recently about higher education. And I think two of the, I would say, most objectionable presidential candidates, mainstream candidates that we've ever seen, it's just leading to a perfect storm that's reminiscent of I think the downfall of the Roman Empire. It was Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr., very famous Supreme Court justice, who once said, to doubt one's own first principles is the mark of a civilized man. And we are not seeing that. Everybody's set, everybody's got the answers, everybody's got their minds made up. I mean, I suppose there are undecided voters out there, but we never really hear about them very much. And so, no, we've got a national debt that's going to destroy the country that no one is making any serious effort to try to curb. In terms of the environment, the planet is almost literally on fire. And all Congress is doing is talking about banning TikTok. I don't get it.
Well, I mean, you mentioned the Roman Empire. To me, the Roman Empire went through a number of machinations, and you could say it's growing and has an exoskeleton, and then it breaks the exoskeleton, it goes into some other period or some other issue. And I think the Roman, I mean, not to get too much into this, the Roman Republic met the political needs of the nation or the city-state for a long while. And then as the empire arose, it became very difficult to maintain that same political arrangement. And so the Julius Caesar story, we have no kings, say the Roman Republic supporters, and then bingo, Julius Caesar's killed, people, and then the emperors stake warfare, civil war, and the nation, or the empire, carouses back and forth. It lasts longer, but it never gets its sea legs back. And I wonder if this is not a time in our history where our institutions are being challenged by circumstances, the 350 million people, millions of new immigrants, all kinds of economic issues, all kinds of wealth, all kinds of political upheavals, all kinds of things happening, and can our political system cope with it? Or do we need some other arrangement, or at least consider another arrangement, at least to understand the problem?
If I could interject here, this raises, and I was talking a little bit about the, if you will excuse me, the uselessness of a history degree.
Yes.
In our last episode. But you're describing sort of the Arnold Toynbee approach, and this raises a very fundamental philosophical question of history. And an American historians in America don't really get much into the philosophy of history that you tend to see somewhat more on the continent. And that is, are there laws of history in the same way that the sort of Adam Smith laws of economics that are immutable, that we are subject to? And if so, are we struggling against these historical laws to try to maintain the stability and prosperity of the United States, or are we somehow doomed by these forces outside of our control to go the way of Rome as we expand, as we build the national debt, as we have these foreign commitments, as we've got greater and more powerful enemies on our borders? Is there any way that we can evade the fate that hit the Roman Empire?
Well, a question to ask is maybe what happens in the Gaza Strip after the Israeli incursion finishes? What's going to happen? What's going to happen to the country in 6 months? What's going to be the arrangement? What are we going to do about all of these issues? And do we have the institutional abilities to do anything about it. And are there wise people somewhere sitting there trying to think what to do? And I'm sure there are. I mean, these think tanks, there are plenty of wise people out there. Are we getting insight from them?
Have you ever seen the movie 13 Days? It's about 20 years old. Kevin Costner. It was about the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yes, I have. I liked it.
And,
right?
and there's a wonderful line that Kevin Costner, who is serving as Kenny O'Donnell, one of Kennedy's
Right.
top advisors, he says, look, there is no font of wisdom. There is no wise old man somewhere. There's just us.
That's a spooky thing to say.
And that's really true. And I know you've resisted this a little bit when I've talked about it in the field of law, but I think it's true, and I think it's true, in this system in general, that certainly since the French Revolution, and probably really before that, the mass, I won't call them the people. The people is an abstraction, but
Sorrow's a great beast.
the herd, the mass of humanity, they are always in charge. I mean, the country is in this shape because they have allowed it to get there. At any time they can rise up and say, we are sick of these congressmen who are fiddling while Rome burns. We're sick of these problems. We're gonna burn the system down and start new. But there just seems to be a mass inertia as long as there's food in the grocery store and entertainment on the TV. There just does not seem to be an incentive on the part of this mass of humanity to change things. I argued during the Cold War and during my callow youth while I was an undergraduate that the Soviet citizens had it within their power to overthrow the system and come up with a new one. And ultimately they did in a way, not quite the way that I imagined. So I guess what you're arguing, what the question is what is it going to take to mobilize the American people to come up with a significant enough change in the system to try seriously, in good faith, to tackle these major issues, these cliffs that we are inexorably heading towards?
Well, are there 20, to me, if we look at the future, are there 20 great problems that might be put there for a discussion? 20, these are, and I think one thing that's going on with our system is the political operatives that basically are directing this electoral cycle. They're very shrewd, they're very smart, and I think they ignore huge swaths of people, and they think, well, they're just, these elections are most decided by the predispositions of the people. And we know what their predispositions are. How do we know what their predispositions are? Well, we have focus groups, and we also have some kind of knowledge of their cell phones, of their computers, whatever. We notice they watch this, they watch that, the things go down, they think. So we have a real sense of what's out there, and we try and tailor our seductive message to win. And we have to, this is how we win. We look at the electoral map, and we discard huge places. Well, let's forget California. There's no reason to even think about that. And it comes down to only 5 or 6 states that apparently have some role in what happens.
Of which Georgia is one right now.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Georgia, for better or worse, is one. And then, not only that, the number of people in the state that are going to determine stuff. And they know who that is. They're like, I don't know, suburban housewives, or I don't know, whoever met. I don't know. But there is a group of people that might be 5% of the electorate. And all you have to do is to get that 60% of them, whatever, and how could you get those 60% there? The other thing that goes on is, well, we know that many people that live in this particular postal zone, if they turned out, they'd vote for our guy. And how can we get them out? And so there are all kinds of mechanisms to basically. They're not going to be won by any intellectual journey. It's not going to be that you persuade them this or that. You could say, this group wants low taxes, and this is the way to, or another group says, we want everyone, the criminals, to be in jail, or this and that, or another group might say, well, we need more food stamps, or whatever we need. And they know, and they're not going to be influenced by your arguments, or Rousseau, or some kind of complicated story about sunspots, or the water temperature in the South Atlantic, whatever. So they don't waste their time talking about this. So it's almost like an advertising campaign, the same way that people can cause you to eat a particular kind of cornflake, whatever. They know how to do that. They use their art, their skills, to put their guy in power, and when people are in power, they're going to fly the airplane in a way that not everyone can appreciate or understand. And finally, I'll say this: it's a little bit about Fabian socialism. It can be the other way. I guess you can have Fabian conservatism. So the groups are, I'm going to get in power, and then I will gradually change your TV show, or I will gradually cause you to I'll gradually make sure that everyone that's under 21 can't have a job, or whatever they do. They can do it gradually, and so the actual impact of the election is not totally understood by the voters. I'd say that's a problem. Just going back to why don't people rise up?
Well, this raises two big issues, two big concerns, and the first issue is, why is it that just the suburban housewives of Georgia are the swing vote? Why, or to rephrase this, why is so much of the electorate set in its ways that they essentially do not matter? And how can we change that? So that's question number one. That's a bad situation to be in. That's a horrible situation for us to have found ourselves in. And secondly, these people doing the manipulating of these relatively small parts of the populace, what does it mean to win? Are we really going to see a lot of difference between a Democratic regime and a Republican regime? The national debt continues to grow, the environment continues to degrade, racial, ethnic, and economic class tensions continue to escalate. They just seem to be arguing over scraps in a way. And so for both the politicians and their consultants who get them into power and get them winning the elections, the game itself becomes the end result. And I don't think that serves anybody except the political elite themselves. Once again, I think this is absolutely terrible for the country. It puts me in the mind, I don't know if you remember Mad Magazine from the days of our youth, but
Alfred E. Newman, right?
the spy versus spy panel, where these two spies, you don't know who they represent or what they're for. It's just all about their battles with each other, and one day this spy wins, and the other day the next spy wins, and the beat goes on.
Well, what you've broached is an interesting dilemma, and that is these extraordinary events are taking place on the planet. All kinds of things are happening. Huge numbers of people, 8 billion of them, a challenge to the environment, all kinds of sociological dysfunction, people not feeling part of the community, the way the brain is functioning, all kinds of problems are likely to appear. And if history is any guide, just to say that, we can expect some chaos of some type. And is there adequate societal power to keep the ship afloat? I guess you'd say that. Is there, and can the politicians do that? And we often criticize politicians, but I think it'd be rather tough to be one. I think they try and be affable. They try and do this. They try and do that. They don't want to rock the boat a little bit, and they've got their own personal ambitions. And I don't know if they're intellectually capable. I mean, I don't want to sound mean about it, but their life work is something else than understanding sunspots. And so is there an interface between power? People say speak truth to power. But is there a conduit so that as these issues appear, we'll say there are 20 big national and world problems. There are 20 of them, whatever you want to say. You could say, I don't know, unemployment or plagues, whatever you want to say. And then do we have a mechanism in place to deal with this? And do we have the wisdom that's coming into the power sphere? So, and generally, we spoke a little bit about universities and university professors, but presumably, one of the things that happens in academics and with the professorial class, if you want to say that, maybe their role is to think creatively, to go out, find problems, and suggest solutions, and then talk to the power structure, the political power structure, and say, should we do this, should we do that, and to persuade them to take appropriate steps. And do we have a system that can do that?
I think we have a system that can do it. The question is, why is it not doing it? And the scenario that always occurs to me is the eve of Pearl Harbor, when there was still a very strong isolationist sentiment in the United States. And perhaps that was not all a bad thing. Then you had Pearl Harbor, and overnight, literally, you have practically the entire country enraged and on the warpath, and you see a mobilization of every aspect of our society that you care to name in support of this war effort that is unmatched in all of human history. And we proceeded to do things over the next 4 years that no one would have thought possible on December 6, 1941. So it can be done. The question is, what can get us on the same page? What is the proper page to be on, of course, but then once we think we know what the proper page to be on is, and I'll keep banging the environmental drum, I think that's the most important one. How do you get us on the same page? How do you mobilize us? How do you get us to see that whatever other problems we have, we've got to put them aside and work in good faith together? And of course, there will be some differences as to how to go about that. But there's a unanimity of purpose there that could achieve the objective. And I just don't see that right now.
As we consider these things, generally what causes national cohesion or groups is this is a hardwired issue with humans. And you could say it's bad. But it's there, and that is my group, and the warmth of my group. Great, and what's going to bring us together is some kind of opposing group. So if an opposing group does something bad, and then the group cohesion, that's a very natural event. And so, what wars do, and generally, I would say this: dictators rather like wars. The reason is it solidifies their power. So the power.
Sometimes.
Well, I would say sometimes is reasonable.
Well, it can be.
Often with the word I would work.
Well, I'd say that certainly the war solidified Hitler's power in the short term. But the modern dictator, those who start wars, tend to lose them in fairly short order. So.
Well, there are advantages. What I'm going to say. Yes. My point is, in human conflict or whatever, and you could have to say to yourself that this is such a strong human nature. It's a strong nature that the country can be solidified if it has an external aggressor against it. And I think a big example would be 2001. Remembering that, I well can remember that just the national cohesion, One story was I planned to go to Australia and give some papers at a big world neurosurgery meeting. I couldn't go, so I wound up in Yellowstone. And there was not many people there. And then at night, there was a person just that was there that could play the piano, played the piano, and everyone sang patriotic songs. They did. And when soldiers were going down the interstate, going to presumably Afghanistan or wherever they went, I mean, people were cheering. There was a great sense of national cohesion, and similar to Pearl Harbor in a way, not as much, but similar. And so it's a more difficult thing to do, I think, because of all the diversity of the country. It's more difficult to get everybody on the same wavelength. They have this opinion, they have that opinion. Not impossible, but I think it's tougher.
Well, here's
and finally,
Yeah.
maybe if the country is, maybe it won't do anything that's particularly bad. Maybe it won't, I don't know, attack Norway or do something really crazy, because there's so many checks and balances with a diverse population here.
Well, here's a thought. Does the other, the enemy other, must it be a human enemy? And once again, there of course were dissidents during World War II, but on the whole, I don't think you've ever seen such national unanimity at that point, or national unity at that point. But compare that to another existential threat, which would be COVID, or if you will, the Spanish flu. And COVID, which could be an existential threat as great as any dictator, as great as any Hitler, didn't turn out to be, but it could have. I mean, the Spanish flu, I mean, look at the numbers there. Right. It became hugely divisive. It didn't cause national unity whatsoever. So it was a non-human enemy just as lethal as any dictator, but it didn't unite us, it divided us.
Well,
that's a disturbing thought.
Yes, I think traditionally political leaders try and, well, it's rather than saying that particular group is bad, something like poverty is bad. So war on poverty, we're going to, or atmospheric pollution. I just don't think that resonates as well in a deep-seated human way that a picture of, I don't know, some person that doesn't look like you killing your dog. I mean, there's a person that's obviously not like you that does something to your group, like they shoot your dog. Well, everybody just goes, that really can resonate if in fact polluted smoke comes in and people get sick. That's something, but that primordial rage.
You have to find somebody to blame it on.
Well, that's if you got human,
face.
I mean, just some kind of human.
The heartless corporation.
And in a way, the deal in
capitalist.
China, the effort was made. It was interesting, wasn't it? The whole deal about the COVID infestation. It could certainly be, without any question, it came from China. And so what President Trump attempted to do was to name it Chinese flu but the days when Spanish flu could be, or the French pox or whatever other thing, I mean, it just didn't work, did it?
And of course, that was misdirection. The Spanish flu began, I believe, in Kansas.
I know that. I know that. But my point is that some other bad people caused this trouble.
Yes.
And so the idea would be, I guess, to blame the Chinese, but they just didn't fly. Even though I think it's certainly reasonable to think that the Chinese scientific establishment played a major role in the infestation.
Well, I suppose the problem is, I don't know if you've ever read The Stand by Stephen King, which is a very chilling look at global pandemic. And one of the epidemiologists, who is actually a very shady character, is talking to the kind of Gary Cooper everyman hero. And the everyman hero says, who caused this? As it's wiping out literally 99% of the world's population. And the smarmy epidemiologist said, everybody, nobody. Where's the blame?
Yes.
And I think that's the problem we feel today. It's somebody else's problem. It's not mine. Who cares? Just give me another beer.
Well, I mean, it's a bridge too far to hope this, but you'd like to say that are 8 billion people on the planet having all these problems together and understanding the same kind of human behavior that causes trouble after trouble, trouble after trouble, ruffle to brain structure, I say that. If you could understand that and then say, all right, now these are what we have to do, and we know that we're going to dislike, one group will dislike the other one, or one group will want to have a big car, no matter what happens to the other little people, I mean, on and on. And navigating through that is going to be quite a vexing, difficult problem.
Well, I suppose if Rome ends up not falling and our tech continues to advance, maybe someday we can rewire the brain in a beneficial manner.
Or we could pass the baton to our computer descendants.
And we'll have to have another conversation about,
Yes.
about that.
Okay, well, thank you so much for being here once
Thank
again,
you.
Buck. And you're going to give me the what is
Vulcan
this?
salute.
The Vulcan.
Live
Right,
long
okay.
and prosper.
51 happy years in the Vulcan.
I'm beginning
Wars.
year
All right,
51,
okay,
so.
all right, great. Good for you. Good for you.
This program is brought to you by the Georgia Neurosurgical Institute. For over 50 years, rendering neurosurgical care to patients of all social conditions, treating complicated problems involving the brain, spine, spinal cord, and peripheral nerves, endeavoring to encourage quality care, medical research, innovation, and education on a local, national, and international basis.